discussion, right?
And we will stop the recording before the discussion, of course. Okay, go ahead.
So I need a PowerPoint presentation from Jenna, actually. But good evening to everybody. First of all, thank you to CoCreate Humanity, the whole team, for this opportunity to be here, for this wonderful organization. And thank you to all of you to be here, because I believe you have a busy agenda like everybody, and I'm delighted that you make the time to be here tonight with us to discuss about how to transition after years in the humanitarian sector. So I just wait that everything is in place. If you can just, yeah, great. So can everybody, I hope everybody can see the presentation. Like Christophe said, so I'm a certified coach in life and career transition, and I work mainly with humanitarian workers and expatriates. I'm now an expatriate since more than 30 years, actually. And I worked in the humanitarian sector for over 10 years. I will tell you a bit more about my own story a little bit later. If it's fine for you, let's go straight to the heart of the matter. So everybody can hear me, I hope. Huh? So yes, perfect. Thank you, Jenna. So today we are tackling this subject of how to transition after years in the humanitarian sector. Regarding the content of today, we'll discuss the challenges of a transitioning humanitarian. So your challenges, I believe, some of them at least. 3 keys to understanding what's going on behind the scenes, and 4 steps for a successful life and career transition. And with my presentation, I hope to help you become a bit more aware of the issues at stake, and to give you some useful insight, hopefully, on how to transition after years in the humanitarian field. And like Christophe said, I will speak around 50 minutes, and then there is a 10-minute break, and then there is an hour left or 50 minutes left to discuss. So while I speak, if it's fine for you, I encourage you to write down your questions, your thoughts, whatever, so that we can then discuss them during the discussion after the presentation. So next slide. I don't see you, so I cannot react to what you say, but if anything is happening, just tell me. So the challenges of a transitioning humanitarian. I'm discussing this subject today because I meet a lot of humanitarians who one day or another day find themselves at a crossroads in their life where they ask themselves this question: what's next? Should I continue this humanitarian life, or should I leave it? Like this famous song of The Clash that I have put on that we have as well put on the advertisement of the webinar about should I stay or should I go, basically. And this is a complicated question for humanitarians because this professional commitment is not a trivial one to begin with. So it's probably your case. Your choice was carefully considered, perhaps even dreamed about, or you began this work out of conviction, passion, and with great enthusiasm. And yet, if you're here today in this webinar, it's because over the years, you have realized that you just don't feel the same passion anymore, or you don't feel at home anymore. I had a client who said that to me: I don't feel at home anymore. So why is that? There are probably several reasons that I will mention to you to see if you recognize yourself in it. So it's about where is your flame of the start, or where is the puff of the start. Maybe one thing that happened over the years is that you are tired of sacrificing your personal and family life, working long hours, being under constant pressure with tight deadlines. You have had enough of living exclusively for your work. Or maybe you have had too many disappointments. You are attached to the humanitarian mission as such, but you have experienced too many frustrations. You no longer feel in tune with your organization, or even more generally with the evolution of the humanitarian sector. You no longer adhere to certain values promoted by this sector. Maybe you feel increasingly out of step. Or maybe you feel that your career is stagnant. You have no perspective. You have the impression that your career path is a mess. You don't have clear professional goals. Everything depends a bit too much on operational needs, on less than transparent application system, on your manager, or on HR, and you feel like you lack recognition and appreciation. Or maybe you no longer have the same desires, the same aspirations, expectations, or needs. You are in another phase of your life, less in line with that of a humanitarian life, basically. You want something else. What I hear sometimes is, I want to be in a relationship, or I want to have a family, or I want to spend more time with my friends, or I want to return to a more stable life, or work in another field, in another sector, or work differently. So that's maybe one of the reasons. Or you have experienced a security incident or burnout or health problem, and since then, nothing has been the same anymore. So you want to get your life back on track, your life and your health back on track, basically. Or you have been laid off, you are disappointed, you lost some of your self-confidence, optimism about the future, and you are not sure how to bounce back from this situation. That might be some of the reason why you are here today questioning, should I stay or should I go? So for sure, you feel a lot of different complicated emotions. I fully understand that because I have been there too a few years ago. And the reason I'm here today is to talk about transitioning humanitarian that, like you have experienced. What I want to speak about today is about these transitions and what it implies and what's behind that. So to start with, I will speak a little bit about my own experience. You can go on the next slide. I hope all is fine for you, that you understand me well. So that's my timeline. So please don't calculate my age, but I have put there in green my transitions, the easy one. And in orange, the transitions that were very complicated for me. So basically, in green, I was born in Kinshasa. I grew up in Germany and Switzerland. At 21, I realized my dream of becoming a teacher at that time and living in Africa. So I worked 3 years in a small village in Madagascar. Then I moved to Bordeaux in France to follow love at that time. So my boyfriend at that time was a professional musician. So I decided at the same time to change professions and became a manager for professional musicians for him and other bands. After 3 years, when that love story ended, I decided to go back to the humanitarian field. I applied to several organizations, and finally I started to work with the ICRC through the International Committee of the Red Cross for 10 years. I did 8 years in the field as delegate, protection program coordinator, deputy head of delegation, and in different contexts in Africa, Middle East, Northern Caucasus, most of them emergency context. And then I worked 2 years in Geneva at the headquarters as well. All these transitions I just spoke about took place naturally for me, without any difficulty. It was easy, even though I made some drastic choices, including several professional reconversions. I really changed job 3 times during this period. Now let's come to the more difficult transition, the one in orange. In the background of this complicated transition was the question whether to stay or leave the humanitarian sector and what to do next. What I didn't realize at that time was that I was combining a whole bunch of different transitions at the same time. So the obvious one was the professional transition. I was considering leaving the ICRC, but I didn't know at all how to do that and for what to do after that. At the time, for me, it automatically meant leaving the humanitarian sector, not only the ICRC, but the humanitarian sector. This was probably linked to false belief I was holding at that time, narrowing a bit down what might be possible. But however, that was why I was professionally. But in addition to that, and that I didn't realize at that time, I experienced another transition, a return back to home after 14 years abroad. And this involves a process known as the reverse cultural shock. And I was not aware about that. A third transition, which was a personal one. I got married and I became a mother. And that changed a lot of things in my life. So new values came up and redefined my priorities, and I had to find a new balance in my life. The fourth transition was that I was approaching the 40s with new expectation, needs, desire for my life and career. I know now that this midlife transition is not a crisis. We often speak about the midlife crisis. It's a healthy and natural transition, but I had no idea about that at that time. And the fifth one is I moved to a new home. And that was a transition too, especially because it was far from the ICRC headquarters in Geneva, which strongly influenced actually my decision to finally leave the ICRC. So it's a bit what I wanted to tell you about my story. The idea of leaving the humanitarian sector at that time raised finally a lot of different questions. Professionally, questions such as, how do I leave a job with such a meaning? What's possibly next? How do I combine and make sense of my past experiences? How do I sell myself outside the sector? So I felt that it was very complicated to leave the humanitarian sector professionally wise. On a personal level, I was asking myself how to live this atypical life. My life as a humanitarian, as an expatriate, without routine, with adrenaline, with full of discoveries. While I was also thinking, but how to keep the right balance with young children with this kind of life, or how to stay close to my aging parents, or how to get back to a normal life. That were a lot of questions that I was asking myself. So living this life seemed hard to me. And socially, like you all, I believe, as a humanitarian, I have had uncommon experiences that only other humanitarians can understand. And this forges a very strong sense of belonging. I was part of a big family, a community with its own codes, private jokes, and I was thinking, but how can I possibly leave my tribe or my family? And how can I keep my current social network if I leave this sector? So for me, leaving this community seemed impossible at that time. So I went through this phase of heavy thinking about what may be next. And this situation generated a lot of guilt for not being able to identify what I really wanted. I finally decided to choose the way that I thought would bring me a perfect life balance, because I was looking for that with small children. So I went back to my first job, teaching. And I started working as a teacher in Switzerland, but I understood a little too late that this wasn't the right choice, actually. And why? Because I was not only in search of a life balance, I was also in search of a job that combined my past experiences and made fully sense to me. So after 3 years, I resigned with no idea what to do next. Shortly after that, my husband was offered a job in New York. He's still in the humanitarian field sector. For me, it was a perfect synchronicity because I was free of any professional commitment. So we went to New York. However, underestimated what it was to become a training spouse, an expat spouse. It's a role which seemed to suit me very well with young children, but which turned out to be particularly difficult to endorse at that time. It's not valued, it's not understood, it's full of pitfalls. So it was not that easy. And I have talked about the role of the expat spouse in a webinar for CoCreate Humanity a few months ago. In case you're interested, you can find this topic as well on their website. So when I was in New York, in addition to that, it was as well extremely difficult for me in the US with my type of visa as an expat spouse. I was labeled to find a job. So I decided at that time to seize this opportunity to go back to school. And it's when I enrolled at New York University for a year-long certification program to become a life and career coach. I did also other trainings in emotional and social intelligence, positive psychology, and later on burnout prevention. The idea at that time was to have something to put in my CV, basically, not to do nothing, not to have a big hole. But eventually, it's during these studies that I got support through coaching, and that I finally succeeded in clarifying what I really wanted professionally and for my life in general. And it's when I decided to start to work as a career and life coach, a job that combines actually my past experiences. It's congruent with my values, with my strengths, providing me the freedom I need to move along with my husband, who has still an international career, and providing me the life balance I was as well looking for. And it's thanks to this alignment that I have done something I would never thought I would do in my life one day, is to set up my own business and become an entrepreneur as such. So that's a bit about my story. It's now 10 years I work as a life and career coach. And that's all to explain to you what brought me here today. Now, what is important to know is that every story is unique. So your story is for sure different from mine. When we talk about how to transition after years in the humanitarian field, it doesn't necessarily mean leaving the sector. There are all kinds of decisions and ways of transitioning. The outcome of your transition will probably be very different from mine. My own story is just one example. Among the people I work with, the outcomes are never the same. And sometimes they themselves are surprised by their own final decision, basically. So what you can take you away from my story today is that if you are facing difficulties today, it's okay. It's normal. There are phases in life that are challenging us more than others. So it's really, sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's more difficult. And by telling my story, what I wanted to say, it's a way to illustrate actually to you how easy some transitions are, while others are much more complicated. And I often hear humanitarians not understanding why they were so good at transitioning and suddenly finding themselves so stuck. That's normal. It happens. It may happen. So it's not you the problem, as you will see later on in the webinar. And another thing I wanted to explain through my story is that it's to highlight actually that there are all kinds of different transitions that can overlap at the same time when you feel stuck and unclear about the future. You are probably not only facing a professional transition, but probably much more, another transition as well. And that's something to keep in mind and to be careful about. My personal takeaway about this life story is that when I feel stuck, it's also okay to ask for support, which can make a huge difference. For me, it really made a huge difference to ask for support and to be helped on this. So the positive thing is that it's precisely some of the lesson I've learned that I'd like to share with you today. So you can change the slides. And I let you read what it's actually to further illustrate some of the challenges you may find yourself in today. Here are a few testimonials from humanitarians I worked with. I let you read them. So meanwhile, I can take a breath and drink a sip of water, if you don't mind. So it's about, yeah, you will see if you see yourself, but I came to question the meaning of my work. I need to change my professional environment, but I don't know how to sell my career path. So there are different situations. If you are here today, it's probably because you realized yourself that, and we can change the slide if everybody had the time to read. Jenna, you want to change the slide? Okay. You probably realize that's enough now. You can't go on like this. You feel the need now to write a new chapter, to give a new boost to your career or to make room for your personal life, while still having a job that fulfills you and inspires you. And yet, beyond this conviction, you remain stuck and perhaps you don't dare to take the plunge. Next slide. Maybe you are even shaking a little because you are asking yourself about, but who am I apart from my humanitarian identity? Your humanitarian engagement has been part of your DNA for such a long time, and everything outside it escapes you. You don't know if you have the strength to leave this life behind you. You ask yourself questions such as, am I ready? Will I be able to reinvent myself outside this sector, or even inside it, but differently? And who I am really today? Or you say to yourself, I don't fit into any box. You think you have an atypical career, misunderstood from the outside the sector, Or you may believe that you are too generalist, or in the contrary, too specialist, or you have the impression that you are negatively labeled as a humanitarian, or you are not sure about what you have to offer, you don't know how to sell yourself on the job market. Or another question you may ask yourself is, what do I really want? Do I want to live, or do I want to stay in the humanitarian field? How can I make the right choice? And you may have plenty of ideas or no idea at all, but you are, for sure, you don't know what decision to take. You are afraid to make the wrong one, basically. And if you decide to stay in the humanitarian sector, you ask yourself, but what needs to change? How to find the right balance or rekindle the flame if I stay in this sector? Or you feel you don't have the energy or the time for a transition. You have already 1,000 things to do without adding this extra mental burden to it. You tell yourself that it would be crazy to start a transition on the top of that. As a result, you procrastinate, which leads you to feel guilty about remaining in this situation that is not the one that you would like to stay in. Or you simply, or not simply, ask yourself how to go about it. How can I make this transition? Where do I start, or what do I need? Maybe you have already tried, but without any real results. You have no plan, no strategy, and you have the feeling it's going to be very complicated. So I don't know if you recognize yourself in one or the other of these statements, but I let Jenna change the slide. Here is one person that says as well how she feels about that. Today, that's my life as it is today no longer correspond to what I want, but I don't really know what I want. Apart from going home and changing my life, I find it hard to reinvent myself after years in the humanitarian sector. Faced with all these questions, it's normal to find it difficult to embark on a transition. And why is it so difficult? You can change the slide. Why all these blockages? Because at this stage, you are probably not yet ready to clarify and decide what you really want. And to explain a bit more what I mean about that, I will give you 3 keys to understanding. So to prepare for this, to prepare to answer this question of how to transition, let's start by understanding a bit what's going on behind the scenes. Is everything fine for everybody? Just to make sure that, okay. I hear nothing, so it should be fine. So the first key is about identity reshaping. Your identity evolves through life. It's transformed by your experiences, contact with others, your learnings, and in fact, you hold distinct identities. You have a professional identity, a personal identity, a social identity, a cultural one, and even probably a virtual identity. Your identity changes, for example, the day you become a parent, or when you change career direction, or when you move abroad, you have a different identity as well, or even when you have a new passion. So the day you started working in the humanitarian field, you took a new identity. And it's a very strong one, the one of becoming a humanitarian, because it includes adopting a new lifestyle and it's often a form of calling. It's not just a job. So I'm sure you will agree with me when I say that working in the humanitarian sector implies a huge commitment with no real distinction between professional, personal, social, and even family life. You breathe humanitarian, basically. Therefore, this professional identity has an impact, influences all different parts of you and all areas of your life. It's not just when questioning the humanitarian, your profession, your job, you don't question only that, you question much more. And this is even more true when you work in the field where the line between personal, professional life, family life is even more thin, basically. So next slide. So by that, I want to explain that as a humanitarian, questioning your humanitarian engagement equals to questioning your identity but your whole identity, not just your professional identity, your other identity too. For example, on a personal level, you will ask yourself, who am I outside this life? On a social level, what is my new status? And how do I leave my tribe? Who am I outside this tribe? On a family level, what choices do I make for my family? Your children with you on missions, or your aging parents staying at home, for example. So there are much more questions when you question your engagement and your job as a humanitarian. It's also because of this strong identity that as a humanitarian, I often hear from humanitarians saying that, what will other people think, my colleagues, my family, if I leave this sector? They are afraid it might be perceived like a betrayal because you are so linked to this identity. They are wondering, how will they react if I dare to leave this sector? Or even, will my family still be proud of me if I'm not in this sector anymore? Or will I still be proud of myself if I'm not working in this sector anymore? It's a lot of questioning, actually, and that explains the difficulty you may be experiencing today. But there is a solution. It's down there in blue. When transitioning, what you need, and that's really the first key, what you need to take is a holistic approach, is to make sure that you take stock of your needs and desire for each area of your life, and not just focus on the professional one, on one domain of your life. It's a mistake I did. I focused, when I transitioned out of the humanitarian field, I focused not on the professional one, but on the personal one. I focused all my attention on one domain of my life, my personal needs, to be present for my small children, because I was a very young mom at that time. I did not seriously consider my professional needs. So I went back to teaching, which was a good choice regarding life and family balance, but was not taking into account my wish to combine my professional experiences. So it's really to make sure that you take an holistic approach when you transition, and to look at each domain of your life, because they are all interconnected and they all influence each other. So maybe you can ask yourself, which part of your identity is the most difficult to let go of? Or which part do you need to pay extra attention to it? So that was about the first key. Second key, sorry, I drink quickly. The second key is about the 3 phases of a transition. Life is made of a lot of transition. I explained that with my story already, but as you understood already now, there are professional transition, personal transition, social transition, financial one, health-wise. There are a lot of different transitions. There are 2 elements that may trigger an internal transition in you. First one are the natural existential transitions. What do I mean? It's childhood, teenage, adulthood, including the 30s, the midlife phase, the 50s, the empty nest, retirement. There are internal transitions that you will experience during your lifespan at one stage or the others. That's one possibility. The second one is that any external change systematically triggers a transition, an internal transition in you. For example, moving to another home, being laid off, changing jobs, becoming a parent, being promoted, experiencing a burnout, adopting a new passion. We often focus on the external change, forgetting that it triggers an internal transition too. So what is important to mention here is that an external change can happen quickly. You get laid off, it goes very fast. You have no responsibility, it goes very fast. You become a parent, 9 months, but then it goes very fast the day your baby is born. But the internal transition phase lasts much longer. Often you say, I don't realize yet that I'm not in this, that the situation changed. A transition is actually the process, an internal transition is the process of internalizing and accepting the change. So it will take more time than the change itself. So, next slide. Like William Bridge, he's a specialist about transition. William Bridge says, was said, it's essential to understand what a transition really is. It's a mechanic that allows our life to move forward. And it's why it's necessary to pay attention to what is going on inside you. And how can you do that? By normalizing your situation and understanding what phase you are in today. So I will explain to you 3 phases that take each transition. Next slide, Jenna, please. Thank you. So a transition takes place in 3 phases. It begins with an end, not with a beginning. It begins with an end. It's like autumn. It's time to close a chapter, and even when the change is positive, it can be difficult to put an end to the previous situation. You need to grieve what was before, to let go of it. It's a difficult step, especially for humanitarians who are very attached to their job and their life as humanitarians. As I often say to my clients, you must close a door to be able to open new doors. So it can be hard, but you have to go through this phase to be able to pass to the next one. The second phase is a neutral zone, like winter. Everything is frozen. Nothing seems to move. You have left behind what was there before, but you don't know yet which door to open. And that's very uncomfortable. But it's also the phase where everything is possible. All opportunities are there. It's really the place where everything is still possible. And then the third phase, so you have to pass through this time. And then the third phase is like spring. Everything that was frozen underground before is now starting to flourish, to bloom. And you know what you want and you are ready to take action. If you are here today in this webinar, it's because you are probably in phase 1 or phase 2 or in between. The 2 phases are full of uncertainties. I sympathize. I know how difficult it is. However, there are 2 phases that are a necessary passage, so that what you are experiencing is normal, and it's even beneficial if you are experiencing that. At this stage, what you need is first to understand that it's normal to experience that, but it's as well time to close the door, let go of what was before, and time to reflect and look for new opportunities. So what you can ask yourself right now is, what phase are you in at the moment? And maybe you can ask yourself, what do you need to go out of this phase? So that was about the second key. Let's go to the third key. So the 5 stages of change. There are a few important points to know about how change happens, because, as said Jack Dixon, next slide, Jenna, if you focus on results, you will never change. But if you focus on change, you get results. You will get results. So first point to know, or first thing to know, next slide, please, is that change is not linear. Change doesn't go in a straight line from A to B. It involves detours, backtracking, setbacks, twists and turns, and that's normal. It's why it's important not to be too impatient and not to have too high expectations about how change should happen, basically. To understand that better, here's a great explaining how change works. You can go to the next slides. So change includes several stages. Pre-contemplation, you don't know yet that change is necessary. You just pre-contemplate all of that. Then contemplation, your current situation no longer suits you, or your current situation changed. You begin to think about initiating this change and to decide what to change, basically. Then comes the next stage, which is planning. Contemplation, planning. Planning, you identify how to create that change. You clarify your goals, define a strategy and a plan of action. Then you have action. You get into action, following your plan of action, moving forward according to it, one step after the other. After action, there is the maintenance, meaning that you work on making this change sustainable. You value and celebrate every small and big step and make sure that you continue to move forward and to make this change happen. And in any change, there is the stage of relapse. you fail, you will fail. It's almost sure at one stage. You fail, then you try again, because you know that relapse is part of the process. It's part of the process. You know that the problem is not you when you fail, but your strategy that you will adapt accordingly. And then when that's done, when you have passed, you can go back and back and forth sometimes, and then the change is achieved, congratulations, termination. What I want to show you with that is that two steps are often overlooked when we speak about change. The one step is the planning one. It's crucial to plan. Going straight into action without planning, without strategy, without an action plan is a big mistake. The second overlooked step is the fact that we can fail, is the fact that failure is part of the process. If you have already tried to transition in the past, and if you have failed, it's okay, it's normal, it's part of the process. Don't question yourself, but question your strategy and adapt it to it. So here you can ask yourself, in what stage are you today? Are you still in pre-contemplation, or are you in contemplation? Are you in action, but did you plan before? So you can look at where you are at with regard to the change. Or you can look in the past and ask yourself, when you failed, what stage did you overlook, basically? So I hope it's useful. That was the third key. So I suggest we pass to the next slide. Here it's a testimonial. I'll let you read it so I can drink. So this person don't want to just talk about it anymore. And my question is, what will be the trigger? And why do I ask that today is, do we have to wait for an external trigger before taking the plunge? That's a big question, because I'm working with humanitarians who are laid off, unfortunately. They had no choice but to leave their job. But surprisingly, after giving it a few thoughts, quite quickly, most of them welcomed the fact that they were laid off. They welcomed it with relief. And why? Because they had long left, actually, they have long felt out of place and frustrated in their current job. But on their own, they hadn't dared to take the plunge, basically. So sometimes the question is, do we have to wait for something to happen from the outside? So it's why I ask a bit, or you can ask yourself in your head, how far you got right now. Do you feel like making a change? Are you determined to implement it? Do you hesitate? And what are you really waiting for? So I hope everybody is still here. And now we start with the 4 steps to succeed with your transition. So we have 3 keys to understanding what's going on behind the scenes. We spoke about your identity reshaping, the 3 phases of a transition, and the 5 stages of change. Now I'm going to speak to you about the 4 steps you can take to help you clarify what transition to make after years in the humanitarian sector. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I have drawn a simple, very simple sketch note of your current situation, or what I believe might be your current situation. You probably feel like you are standing at the foot of a big mountain. You know you had like to initiate a change, a transition in your career, in your personal life, or both, but you have no idea what and how. The answer lies behind the mountains, but the path seems long and difficult. As we said earlier, at this stage, your head is in a fog. You have lost the flame, or you are shaking a little, you are frustrated, disappointed, tired, maybe a little scared. The top of the mountain seems impossible to reach. It's too far, too high, too hard. What you need to know here is that starting a transition requires a good dose of energy and motivation. And without it, you can't hope to think clearly, to take a step back, or to unleash your creativity, or to nurture your self-confidence. And yet, I bet that right now, your day-to-day life and your headspace are eating up all your energy. You feel maybe a bit drained, and the mere thought of adding the challenge of a transition to the mix seems completely crazy. So I don't know if it's how you feel, but if you feel that, or even if you don't feel it, what I suggest is a first step. You can change side, sorry. So the first step is to identify your energy leaks and recharge your batteries. It's to identify actually your energy leaks means what is draining your energy, what puts you down. It's everything that in one way or another holds you back, blocks you, prevents you from being creative, optimistic, motivated, and determined to begin this transition. So your negative thoughts and limiting beliefs are often extremely energy consuming. What's more sure is that they shape as well your reality, which doesn't make the process even easier. You probably know that your brain has a negative cognitive bias that tends to pay attention to what's not working rather than what's working well. And as a result, you are discouraged before even starting your transition. That's why it's important to take care of that and to counterbalance actually this negative bias. So these energy leaks come in all sorts of different forms. So I list a few so that you can think about what may drain your energy right now. Your belief about yourself and the job market, your negative belief about yourself and the job market, your doubts about what is possible and what is not, your frustrations, your lack of clarity and direction about the future, your lack of alignment with your values, your lack of time for yourself to reflect, your daily worries, other people emergencies that interfere with what's important to you, the expectation and concerns of those around you, the constant decision you have to make, multitasking or multiple roles, multiple hats, your lack of sleep even can be one of the energy leaks that you have. So I don't know what particularly drains your energy, but by identifying your energy leaks, you will be able to identify how to recharge your batteries. And from there, you can also promote activities that give you energy. The activities that makes you feel good, activities that make your heart sing, what engage your strengths and so on. If you don't do this work, you will remain at the foot of this big mountain, looking up and telling yourself that it's just unreachable. By taking care of your energy and recharging your batteries, you give yourself the means to finally start climbing that mountain. And this is one of the most important work I do with all the people I work with. Next slide, please. So here's a person speaking about that. I'll let you read. So I can't bring about that change because I need to find the strengths and resources to get going. So first step is to work on that. Second step, next slide. Careful, it's a big title. It's to awaken your adventurous side. So what a title. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. I meet a lot of humanitarians for whom their life has become so much their reality that they have forgotten how adventurous, courageous, and ready to take on challenges they are. And chances are that you are one of them. Today, faced with this professional transition, you are shaking a little, like we explained at the beginning, but yet deep down, you have everything you need to succeed in your transition. Actually, what you need to do that is to reconnect with that part of yourself. Remember when you decided to get involved in the humanitarian work, you didn't choose to stay in a traditional job. No, in the contrary, you chose to embark on an adventure despite the social and personal costs, despite your fears and those of the people around you, despite the risks. You wanted to break your straitjacket, to get out of the box, to experience something new, different, atypical, the same atypical that you may see today as a hindrance to your professional future. So at that time, you have chosen to step out of your comfort zone. And today, I bet you need to reconnect with that part of yourself to do this transition, to awaken that courageous, adventurous, maybe slightly rebellious part of you, which has proven its ability to adapt, to take on challenges, to dare to go beyond its limits. So by reconnecting to this part of yourself, you'll be able to draw to draw on your own resources, and that's what will enable you to move forward with confidence. I hope it makes sense. Let you go to the next slide. I discovered myself to be resourceful and stronger than I thought. It's so often the case. So you can go to the next slide. So thanks to step 1 and 2, you are ready to climb the mountains now. You have recharged your batteries and you have reconnected with your inner adventurous part. That is what helps you overcome the blockages, the fears, the doubts you have right now. You have identified the beliefs that were preventing you from connecting to your inner compass, to who you are. You have discovered the thoughts that were clipping your wings and those who are allowing you to spread them. You have questioned the veracity of the stories you are telling yourself, maybe on your career path, on your life, on the job market, and so on. You have begun to align actually to yourself and with who you are, and it's why you are ready now to climb this mountain. And it's during this climb that you will activate the third step. Collect your treasures and reveal your uniqueness. So you are now in the middle of the climb, and along the way, you are clarifying your identity. Remember, we spoke a lot about identity before. Who you are today and what you have to offer today. Collecting your treasure means identifying your strengths, your values, your priorities, your needs, your desires, your qualities, what gets you in the flow, your passions, if you have any, your experiences, your successes, your learnings, your skills, all kinds of skills, academical skills, professional skills, technical skills, but as well soft skills, because as a humanitarian, you have a lot of soft skills. So everything that makes you who you are today. And here you will understand what makes you unique, your added value, what are your assets. It will help you accept who you are. It will help you regain confidence in yourself and in the future. You will know how to set limits as well, so that you can take care of yourself and your own priorities and to affirm yourself correctly. You will take a fresh, realistic, and complete look at your personality and your career path. And as a result, you will finally feel completely aligned with who you are today. And in turn, you will know exactly what you have to offer and how to communicate about it, how to sell yourself. I often hear humanitarians saying, I don't know what I can offer outside this sector. By aligning with yourself, knowing what is your added value, knowing who you are today, you will be then able to explain what you have to offer very clearly. It will be evident and clear for you what you have to sell on the job market. This is a crucial step because the way you look at yourself influences the way others will look at you and your career path. So if you don't believe in yourself, who will believe in yourself? You need to be the first person to believe in yourself. So as Carl Rogers says, next slide, when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. That's the key to create change. Can pass to the, yes, it's testimonial. I'm more confident, I accept myself. And since I accept myself, I'm more ambitious personally and professionally than I have ever been. Next slide. So it's not the mountains we conquer, but it's ourselves. Once you have completed these 3 steps, a small miracle happens because you have managed to win yourself back. And you have a better understanding of who you are and what you have to offer. And above all, you have challenged your limiting beliefs, the ones that were preventing you from accomplishing a certain number of actions. Remember, we said before, change involves an internal transition and a reshaping of your identity. So you need to go through these steps. This internal transition involves reconnecting with your inner compass, with who you are, finding the alignments you have lost along the way, and now it's done. So next slide. Now you are at the top of the mountain. You have the energy, you know who you are, what you have to offer. You have already made a surprising journey on the way, full of discoveries and learnings, and you feel aligned and proud to be at the summit, savoring the road you have traveled. Now there is just one more step. It's the step that will enable you to answer the question how to transition after years in the humanitarian field. So the step 4 is to clarify your vision and how to reach it. From up there, from the top of the mountain, you are ready now. Now you are ready to clarify concretely what you really want for all areas of your life, because as we have already seen, it's important to have a holistic approach. And from up there, you have the needed perspective. It's with this clarity that everything becomes possible. From here, you will be able to identify your life and career goals. The trick here is to uncover your long-term vision, not to look just at in the next 6 months or in next month or next year. It's to have a long-term vision, to look in 3, 5, or 10 years, and to imagine your ideal life, no limitation, everything is possible, everything went well. You imagine that in details for all areas of your life. By taking this long-term view, you can take your eyes off the wheel, broaden your field of vision, and answer the question how to transition after years in the humanitarian field. Should I stay? Should I leave? And if I stay, how should I continue? Or if I leave, what should I do? And that answer, I promise, it becomes obvious once you have done done the 3 steps before. You have this answer thanks to the 3 previous steps. Then, when you have your vision clearly in mind, it's time to define your strategy that includes your short, medium, and long-term vision. It will not be only for the long term, but you have a strategy for the short as well and the medium term. And from here, you will as well define your action plan to reach your destination. Because remember, it's a crucial step of change. You need a plan, you need a strategy before you act. And you finally know what you really want, and now you know how to get there. So all the humanitarians I worked with went through this process. They moved through the 4 steps, and it really works. So it's and it's a big relief when we know what we want in the end. So you can go to the next slide. It's 2 testimonial about that. Now that I know what I want, I'm motivated to move forward. I have no doubts anymore. So to conclude, next slide. On the left, look at transition equals preparation. That's very important. And preparation equals alignment with who we are, vision to know what we want, strategy, and plan of action. So today we spoke about 3 keys to understand what's going behind the scene, what's going on in ourselves. And from that 3 keys, to have an holistic approach, to always look at all domains of your life, not only one domain of your life, to take time to close the door, time to reflect, and to have a strategy and a plan of action, to define a strategy and a plan of action. And to do that, there are 4 steps. The first one is about energy. You need to really recharge your battery. The second one is about courage and open mind, to have an open mind, to awaken your adventurous side, and to be back to this outlook that with all the possibilities. Third is to align with yourself, with who you are and what you have to offer. And fourth is to find your vision on the long-term vision, and then to define your strategy and plan of action. While you do that, you will work on your mindset. You will work on your mindset, on your self-confidence, and on your optimism. And while you do that, you will gain self-awareness, self-understanding, which brings self-compassion, which brings self-respect, and that brings self-affirmation, which is very important, the self-affirmation, when you transition and you look for a new job or you want to make a professional reorientation. So now, with all that, you know how to transition after years in the humanitarian sector, and from there you can take action to make your transition a success. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I hope it was useful. I hope it makes sense to you. I want to leave you, before we make the break and go to the discussion, to leave you with, to conclude with a quote from Gandhi on the next slide, who said, the greatest of travelers is not he who has gone around the world 10 times, but he who has gone around himself or herself once. And I believe this is the main message of today, to transition, what you need to know is who you are, especially when you come out or you are in the humanitarian sector, for the reason we mentioned during the webinar, and it applies to any type of transition. And now my quote or my belief on the next slide is in every transition, whether desired or imposed, there are opportunities to be seized and a chance to reinvent yourself a little, a lot, even passionately. You have already been, as a humanitarian, through a lot of transition, I'm sure. And if you are here today, it's because you have managed to overcome them. So you have all the resources within you to make this new transition a success. I'm sure of that. So next slide. If you want to keep in touch, you can invite me on LinkedIn. You can write to me directly. Don't hesitate to do that. You can get in touch with me by email, through LinkedIn, through my website. Don't hesitate. It would be a pleasure to speak with you. But before all, I would be very happy if you stay for the discussion after this webinar. Next slide is about the questions. So I hope you have questions or thoughts or whatever. I would be happy that we discuss. I hope it was clear. I stayed on time.